You get home, close the door, and before you even think about it, your whole body changes, your face relaxes, your shoulders drop, your breathing slows down. The version of you that was outside all day, answering people, reacting to people, listening to people, suddenly disappears. Nothing bad happened today. No one insulted you. No one treated you differently. Everything looked normal from the outside. You were just around people, talking when it was your turn, listening when it was expected, responding in a way that kept everything smooth, and yet now being alone feels like relief. Not comfort in the simple sense, but something deeper, like your system was under pressure and now it finally released it. If that feels familiar, you have probably tried to explain it at some point. Why do other people seem energized by the same situations that drain you? Why can they stay longer, talk more, and still want more while you leave needing space? At some point, you may have blamed yourself. Maybe you thought you were too sensitive. Maybe you believed you needed to change. Maybe you tried to force yourself into a version that never felt natural. But what if the problem is not how much you like people? What if the real difference is how your brain processes them? Because people who genuinely prefer being alone are not avoiding life. They are responding to it differently. And once you understand how that works, your need for solitude stops looking like a flaw and starts looking like a pattern. Most people say they like quiet, but very few people are comfortable with it when it becomes real. A few minutes without a phone, music, or background noise, and something starts to feel off. They look for something to fill the space. It is not a conscious choice, it is automatic. Silence feels like something that needs to be fixed. But for you, silence works differently. When everything gets quiet, you do not rush to escape it. You stay. And when you stay, your mind begins to open. Thoughts that were buried under noise begin to surface. Details from earlier in the day return with more clarity. Questions form that were not visible when everything was loud. You are not running from your thoughts, you are engaging with them. This builds a level of internal awareness that most people never develop, simply because they do not stay in silence long enough to reach it. For you, silence is not empty. It is where your mind organizes itself. It is where you understand what you actually think and feel without external pressure shaping it. That is why being alone does not feel like a lack of stimulation. It feels like a different type of stimulation, one that comes from inside. People often assume you get tired because you are not good at socializing, but the reality is more specific. You are not disengaged, you are processing more. When you are in a conversation, you are not only reacting to words, you notice tone changes, you notice pauses, you notice when something sounds slightly off, you track meaning beneath the surface. And this is not just a habit, there is a biological reason behind it. Research in personality neuroscience shows a consistent difference between introverted and extroverted brains, especially in how they respond to dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical linked to reward and stimulation. Extroverted brains are more driven by external dopamine rewards. Social interaction, novelty, and fast paced environments increase their energy. Introverted brains are more sensitive to dopamine. That means the same level of stimulation that energizes someone else can overload your system much faster. So it is not that you get less energy, you reach your optimal level sooner. After that point, more stimulation does not feel good, it feels excessive. That is why long conversations, crowded environments, or constant interaction can become tiring even when nothing is wrong. Your brain is not rejecting people, it is regulating input. And at the same time, you are doing something else. You are processing more detail per interaction. So you have two factors working together: higher sensitivity to stimulation, deeper processing of what is happening. That combination explains why your energy drops faster. Not because you are weaker, because your system is doing more work. Before we go further, check this. If at least one of these feels familiar, this video is probably describing you more than you expected. First, after social situations, you do not feel sad. You feel mentally full, like your brain processed too much at once. Second, you often notice small changes in people that others completely ignore, like tone shifts, forced reactions, or subtle tension. Third, you prefer a few deep conversations over many light ones, even if that means being alone more often. If you recognized yourself in one or more of these, keep watching, because the next part explains something most people never realize about themselves. You walk into a room and something feels off before anything actually happens. No one explains it, no one points it out, but you feel it immediately. There is tension somewhere. Someone is uncomfortable. Someone is not fully present. This is not random. Part of it comes from a system in the brain often linked to mirror neurons. Mirror neurons activate when you observe other people. They help you simulate what someone else is feeling internally, almost as if your brain is mirroring their emotional state. For some people, this system operates at a higher sensitivity. That means you do not just see emotion, you absorb it. You pick up on signals that others barely register. A slight change in expression, a pause that feels different, a shift in posture that does not match what is being said. Individually, these details are small. Together, they form a pattern, and your brain reads that pattern quickly. The problem is that the system does not turn off. You do not choose when to notice these things, they happen automatically. Over time, this creates pressure because when you are constantly receiving emotional input from your environment, it becomes harder to separate what belongs to you and what belongs to others. That is why being alone feels different, not empty, clear. It is the only place where your mind is not processing everyone else at the same time. There is a kind of thinking that only appears when your environment becomes quiet enough. It does not show up in constant conversation. It does not show up when your attention is divided. It appears when your mind has space. You are alone. There is no pressure to respond, no need to perform, and slowly your thoughts begin to connect. One idea leads to another. A memory links to something recent. A pattern becomes visible. You are not trying to solve anything directly, but your brain is building something in the background, a new perspective, a clearer understanding, a connection that was not obvious before. This is why being alone can feel productive even when nothing external is happening. Because internally, your mind is active. It is organizing information, connecting patterns, and creating meaning. Most people rarely reach this state because they are constantly interrupted. You reach it more often because you allow space for it. And that is why your thinking feels different, not faster, deeper. You have probably been in situations where everyone is talking, but nothing meaningful is happening. The conversation continues, but it feels empty. At some point, you disengage, not because you do not care, because your brain already made a decision. This is not worth the energy. You are not looking for constant interaction. You are looking for something real, something that holds your attention beyond surface level conversation. That naturally limits the number of people you keep close, not as a rule. As a result, your mind filters quickly. It recognizes what feels genuine and what does not. And once that line is clear, it becomes difficult to ignore. That is why your circle is smaller. Not because you lack options, because you choose carefully. And that choice creates a different type of connection. When you look at all of this together, it is not a random list, it is a system, a mind that is comfortable in silence, a brain that processes more than it shows, an awareness that detects emotional patterns early, a thinking style that builds depth in quiet, and a filter that prioritizes what is real. That is not a flaw. That is a different way of experiencing the world. But there is one question you need to answer honestly. Are you alone because it restores you? Or are you alone because it protects you? Those two can look identical, but they lead to very different lives. If this felt familiar, you probably already know the answer. Subscribe for more videos on psychology, behavior, and self awareness.